So what's the easiest way to start a business in this day and age? Well, I'll be breaking down just that and telling you more about my journey and experience so far. So stay tuned. Now guys, you're gonna see, I made a few notes here. You're gonna see that, everything I touch on, or throughout everything I touch on, you're gonna see that some of the biggest themes that I have is getting started as quickly as possible. One thing I realized is that you really need to focus on momentum, especially whenever you're just at the beginning, because if you don't have any sort of momentum, it's going to be so much more difficult for you to keep pushing, right? If you're not able to get sales, right, for 6 months or a year, right, think about how much more likely you are to quit, right? So I always look at it as you want to get started. You want to start getting sales, getting customers, delivering on the product as fast as you can. That way you kind of have, not only do you have like a feedback loop, right? You have clients or customers that have come in and bought your product, which is going to incentivize you to, one, you're gonna be able to deliver on the product, but also incentivize you to start improving on the product, hearing what they have to say for you to be able to keep making it better and continue to build a better product, service, everything, right? And also on top of that, I've realized it's such a psychological thing, right? I've noticed that when I've had projects where I knew that it was going to take a long time to make money, or I thought I was going to have success right off the bat, but any types of progress kind of dragged on, or it took me a long time to be able to make whatever progress in my eyes. It took a long time for me to get it, whether it was getting sales or having a finished product, whatever the case may be. I realized that I got a lot less productive. Like little by little, I was getting less and less productive when I didn't see that success, until it got to a point where it was kind of like, I feel like every day that went by, I was kind of dragging my feet, and I just feel like I wasn't really doing nothing, right? And so that's where a lot of these tips are going to come from. Now, the first one I want to touch on is building an MVP. Okay, if you haven't heard of this before, MVP is a minimum viable product. The idea is that, you want to try to create as little as possible to be able to get you up and started as fast as possible. Okay, but you want to make sure that you find, let's say that you have this big vision in your mind of what type of product or service that you want to create for your customer. Right? You want to try to figure out what part of that big vision could you get started as fast as possible or launch as fast as possible that would deliver the most value as possible to your end user, right? Because whenever you look at it from that aspect, right, once you get started and you have something out there, it's a lot easier for you to keep adding on to it, right? Because one, not only are you able to have the funds, you have money coming in, revenue coming in to help keep funding the overall business in general, but two, you now have customers that can give you feedback based off of what you're doing. The worst thing that can happen is you spend 2 years working on something, and then when you release it, nobody buys, right? And you can't figure out how to sell it, and you realize, oh, nobody really wants what I'm selling, right? So it's much better for you to launch something as fast as possible and then start iterating on it and improving on it. I shot a video in the past where I talked about Apple and how you can literally Google Apple's logos, right? And you can see what their first logo was versus what their logo is now. Their first logo was literally looked like a portrait of somebody sitting under the tree, a Newton sitting under a tree, and then the apple hitting his head, right? Versus now it's literally just an apple, you see? So they had that transition. But that's kind of how you want to look at it, is what you start off with today is not, that's not your end, right? That's just your beginning. So you know that you're going to get to another place. So you want to look at this minimum viable product. One example for me has been creating, I want to create an app. Now, before, I've talked about it in previous videos, I was looking at potentially buying apps or buying like a software company that was, adjacent to what I was doing. That way I could then, keep adding on to this adjacent software and make it into the software that I wanted to have. But just negotiations and stuff have been kind of difficult. So I started looking more into, me creating my app from the ground up. Now, one thing I've realized is that what I need to do is I have this big vision of what this app's gonna do, but I need to start with like the bare necessities, and I need to just provide value to who my end user, like who my dream customer is, right? If I'm seen as like this, there's this specific audience that I know would benefit from what my app the vision of my app is going to be, then I need to figure out what do these guys need right now, and I need to create an app that just does those basic things. And as I have customers, I have people who are willing to pay me for this app, then I can use that money to keep building out the features that I really want, right? So that's kind of how you want to look at it. Now that can go with anything, right? Building a website, that's one thing that I wanted to make sure I touch on. I think in the past I've spent a lot of time trying to build a website and spending way too much time building a website. I'm talking like I could spend 2 weeks working on a website when I could have just spent the money to pay to have someone do it and get it done in even a week. But me being able to spend my time working on doing more things related to building my business, right? That's kind of how you want to look at it. So whenever it comes to building a website, I think you should go one of two routes. I think one, if you are selling a physical product, to me, I recommend Shopify hands down. That's what I used early on whenever I started building my first websites. To this day, if I want to launch another e-commerce company, I'm going to use Shopify. I'll link to them down below, but these guys are amazing. What's great about them is they've kind of created it into a marketplace in the sense that you use them to build a website, right? They have really easy to use website builders where you're able to drag and drop and move things around. It makes it really easy. It's not like you actually having to program your own website. Back in the day, you had to literally code every piece of your website. They make it a lot simpler where you don't have to do that. But if you want to add, custom features or whatever the case may be, you can bring in a programmer to do that, right? And there's people out there who just program Shopify stores, right? But yeah, they're going to be really great. They have a lot of themes that are available, so you can actually buy instead of you creating the whole website, you can buy a theme, and then all you have to do is pretty much change out the color layout, add your photos in there and all that stuff, add your products, and you're good. Okay, so check out Shopify if you're selling a physical product. If you're doing more of a service-based business, I would recommend you just create more of a landing page instead of a website, instead of a full website. What a landing page is it can be like a one-page website where someone comes to your home page and they just have maybe some navigation menus at the top, and they can click, maybe there's like an about section, and they click a button and it slides down to where you have a little about section. Or they want to see your services, they click services on the nav bar at the top, and it slides them down to your services section, right? All this is on one page, and it makes it really easy to read, and it's even easier for you to actually create. In that case, you might be able to create it by yourself, right? So this is basically just one page website. It's really, you want to keep it really basic, because all you want to do with this thing is you just want to be able to, have people give you their phone number to reach out to them, or their email to reach out to them, right? The idea is you're selling a service. It's probably like a higher cost service. It could be, let's say for example, you charge $500 for something, you charge $1,000 or even $10,000 for something. You don't want to try to sell them on your website. You want them to call in because they're going to have concerns, right? Think about all the questions that you've gotten when you've done this service before. Those are the kind of questions that people are going to have that you can try to answer on your website, but also you're going to want to get them on the phone to close them, right? To answer those questions and then get that close. So I recommend you use a website called ClickFunnels for that. I use ClickFunnels for a lot of the stuff that I do. And they're great too, because it makes it really easy to get websites up and running, and to create other landing pages, right? For example, let's say you're a mechanic, okay? But you're like a traveling mechanic. You go to people's houses. You can have maybe you have your own one-page website that you have for you being the mechanic, but then you want to do like a Christmas theme version, right? And you want to do that just for the month of December. Well, what you can do is you can literally copy your website. Like you can literally duplicate that website and then just change the coloring or add a little bit of, Christmas theme to it. And then boom, now you got another page, right? So they make things really easy like that, which is dope. So that's going to be what's most important about this point is, you want to make sure that you're creating a rudimentary product that you can actually sell, right? And then you want to use your profits the money you start making, the money you have coming in, to continue to improve on the product, to improve on your services that you're offering, to automate as much as you can, things like that, right? To actually build the business. So whatever your vision is, figure out what's the most valuable part of it for your customer, right? Or that's also easiest to create for you, and start with that, right? I think that's going to be a good starting spot. Another thing you can do is partnering with other entrepreneurs, okay? I think this is especially is something that's especially good if you have, a group of business-minded friends that have, they have strengths where those are your weaknesses, right? Maybe you're not good at marketing, but you know a guy who's really good at digital marketing, or you're not good at product delivery or creating the product, but you got someone who can, and you know that you're good at, you would be able to market it, right? So there's like where you guys have a synergy of sorts, right? I think one of the big positives of you having a partner is that you're now on this like entrepreneur journey with somebody else, okay? So this makes it even better or even easier to push through in moments where it feels like where you feel like giving up, because you have somebody else that's with you along the ride as well. Okay, so that's kind of how I look at it. I think that's a huge benefit, right? But one thing I do want to touch on is make sure that 1 + 1 does not equal 2, right? 1 + 1 should equal 3 or 4 or 5. And what I mean by that is, don't just bring in somebody else just to bring in somebody else that's kind of splitting the work with you, right? You want to make sure that you're bringing in somebody else where the synergy between you two, it's giving you even more of a boost, or you're going to have more success than you would have had going at it alone, or even hiring people down the road, right? You want it to be something where, because of you two working together, things are just blowing up a lot faster, right? So that's just something you want to keep in mind. Make sure that it's not something like, oh, you need to have an accountant or a bookkeeper. So you hire a bookkeeper, or you're giving equity to a bookkeeper. Now he's a partner, right? And all this person is going to be doing is your books, right? That's kind of how you want to look at it. Or you have someone building a website and you want to bring them in as a partner, but all they're doing is just building a website one time, right? So that's kind of how you want to look at it. Also, make sure you have clear lines drawn. You want to make sure that, everybody knows what their actual functions are. The worst case scenario, the worst thing that can happen is, at the beginning of the business, y'all didn't make clear or set clear expectations. And now this business of yours is doing $100,000 a year or $500,000 a year. And one person's slacking off and the other person's pretty much doing all the work, right? At the beginning, if you're feeling good about starting your business, so on and so forth, but I'm telling you, the second either money starts being made, or after it's been 6 months, been a year of you working on this thing, and the success, you haven't seen the success yet, you're gonna start trying to look around and figure out what's wrong or what's going on, right? If it's you doing all the work, if you're doing 80-90% of the work, but you only get 50%, right? That's gonna not rub you the right way it's gonna rub you the wrong way when you really start, you take a time to deep dive into the numbers, or deep dive into, what you can do to have more success, right? You wanna make sure that early on, everybody has, you've talked about what everybody's roles are, okay? And I think this is especially important, especially thinking about what happens if somebody wants to leave, or what happens if somebody passed away. But we don't want to talk about it, but if you have a partner and he passes away, technically now you have a new partner or new partners, right? Technically all this stuff, like his assets are passed on to his family. So now you might have went from, you had a partner that you guys were best friends with, and now his assets have been passed to his wife that you don't have a good relationship with, or maybe his kids who you don't particularly like. And now they're your partners, right, in this business. So that's kind of how you want to look at it. You want to make sure that you guys talk about all those things, right? So this can be a great option, but there's a lot of risk involved. That's where you kind of want to make sure that you're being careful how you're playing it. Another big option is buying a business, right? Instead of starting a business from scratch, it's been said that most businesses fail, right? Like 90% or 80%, I can't remember the exact statistic. I think it's 90%. 90% of businesses fail within the first year or two. So it might make more sense for you to just buy a business that's already making money, right? Obviously, it's possible that you might have to put more money into it than you would have if you started from scratch, but it kind of depends where you are in your life and what skills that you can bring to the table. I think one thing to know that is that nowadays there's a lot of information out there about buying businesses. Even me, for myself, when I was looking at buying businesses, buying assets, and I still really am, right? I found a lot of information out there about how to go about doing it, how to make sure that you're careful and you're not taking a risk, right? Because you got to look at it like, it's kind of like when you go out and buy a car, right? You want to make sure that the car is working, right? You want to make sure that the car does everything that the owner said that it would, right? You might even have a mechanic come out and look at the car depending on where you're buying. Okay, that's kind of the same idea with a business, right? There's so many more aspects or facets to a business that you want to make sure that everything's on the up and up, and the owner isn't trying to hide anything, right? He's not trying to, hide anything in the numbers, things like that. But there's a lot of information out there that can help you. And another thing is, it's not as expensive that people make it out to be. You might see on the news a lot of stuff about, oh, this company's been acquired for $2 billion, or this company's been acquired for $100 million, whatever the case may be. But There's businesses out there that you can buy for 10,000, for $1,000, for even $100. It depends on what types of, it depends what type of business it is, what, what they're offering, what assets they have. I think when you go lower to like $100, 500, 1,000, it might not be an actual business. It might be that you're buying the assets of the business. Maybe somebody wanted to start a business and they created a website and they already created the products and everything, but they haven't been able to get customers. So there you're buying pretty much a business that's been built out, but it just doesn't have the marketing, right? So you want to kind of look and see what kind of business or even assets you can buy that can complement the skills that you have, right? Where maybe the previous owner didn't have the skills you do that can help you propel the business and make more money from it, right? So that's kind of how you want to look at it. In conclusion, guys, this is pretty much some of the easier ways that I've seen to be able to get into entrepreneurship and be able to have your own business, okay? So if you're interested, subscribe so you can keep track on my journey, because I plan on shooting more videos about how I go about business building, how I go about buying businesses down the road, and so on and so forth. So that's something that interests you guys. Be sure that you hit that subscribe button, and also I'll try to link to some videos and some playlists here that can show you a little more about that and more that I've talked about those specific topics. Alrighty, so I appreciate y'all watching, guys, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace.